and public health emergencies. And I will tell you, the information that you relay to the public over the next few days will be critically important. I am joined again today by Ben Schott of the National Weather Service. He'll be updating you on Hurricane Delta in just a few moments. Today, I sent a letter to President Trump requesting a pre-landfall major disaster declaration. He called about an hour ago. I spoke to him. He indicated to me that he would be signing that declaration when it reached his desk, which we expect to happen later today or perhaps tomorrow morning. And I want to thank him for that. He indicated that he and his administration, and in particular FEMA, would be leaning forward with the state of Louisiana in advance of Hurricane Delta, but also in its aftermath they would stick with us. And so we appreciate his prompt attention to the request and the assistance that he's already made available to us. And I'm expecting that pretty soon we're going to have official notification that that declaration has been signed. As you probably know, Hurricane Delta is currently forecasted to make landfall as a Category 3 major hurricane in Louisiana on Friday afternoon. That means that by Friday morning, conditions will be deteriorating rapidly. And so what I'm trying to impart to the people of Louisiana is that by the end of the day Thursday, you need to be where you intend to be as you ride out the storm, and you need to be postured however you need to be postured. So do all the work that you need to do to fortify your position to get ready. Make sure you have your supplies on hand, and if you have any question about what that should look like, go to getagameplan.org, and it will help you. And again, we are in a COVID environment, and so that list of things that you need and some of the things that you need to do will be different this year than it's been in the past. While the track has shifted a little bit west, it is still true that the overwhelming majority of the coast of Louisiana remains in the cone. So please don't get too fixated on the center line of the track. And in fact, a third of storms actually make landfall outside of the cone. So nobody should get too fixated on any of this, but we should all be aware that the storm is coming, that it's going to be a very serious storm. Delta is forecasted to be a hurricane in as far north as central Louisiana too. We saw this with Hurricane Laura. And so we're not just speaking to Louisiana residents in the coastal area of our state. We're speaking to everybody in the state of Louisiana today. And in fact, we don't expect the hurricane to become a tropical storm until just about the time it exits northeast Louisiana. So everyone should be ready. At this time, a hurricane watch has been issued for just about the entire Louisiana coast. No one should let their guard down. And with a lot more specific and detailed information, I'm going to ask Ben to come up and give you a briefing. Now, none of you called him back up for any questions yesterday, so I'm going to ask you, if you've got questions, go ahead and do it when he finishes speaking, because I want to make sure that the information that he and the National Weather Service has is very clearly articulated to the people of Louisiana. So if you've got a question of Ben at the conclusion of his remarks, please ask him those questions. I'll come back to the podium on the back side of his presentation.
Thank you, Governor. Again, we're here to talk a little bit about Hurricane Delta. Again, we're looking to see it forecast. Let's talk a little bit about what we have on there. First of all, so here's the situation overview with Hurricane Delta. Again, my name is Benjamin Schott. I'm with the National Weather Service out of New Orleans. We're expected Delta to make landfall as we move into the day on Friday, as the Governor mentioned. You know, the window for preparations is going to be closing as we go through the end of the day tomorrow. The first sign of the tropical storm force winds may come in earlier on the day on Friday. There's a little bit of uncertainty exactly with the track and exactly with the intensity. There always is just a small amount. As the governor mentioned, a third of the landfalls happen outside of the actual cone. So again, as he had mentioned, I don't want anyone to fixate on the exact cone or the exact center line. Understand if you are under watches, if you are under warnings, you are at risk, and then you need to prepare properly for those threats. Some of those threats, as you see there with the list, are life-threatening storm surge along the coast. Obviously, hurricane-force winds we saw with Laura can do an amazing amount of damage. And as the governor mentioned, these will be going well inland. They won't be happening just at the coastline itself. And then there will be also the possibility in some heavy bands with heavy rainfall, as well as possible flash flooding and river flooding as Delta moves on shore during the day on Friday and departs the state on Saturday. Here's a look at the latest track from the National Hurricane Center. Again, you can see that Delta is coming off the Yucatan Peninsula right now as we speak. It was weakened by moving over land over the course of the last 12 to 24 hours as it crossed the peninsula. Though right now it is still a hurricane, and there are the first little signs that show that it may be starting to strengthen or will strengthen over the course of the next 24 to 36 hours as it moves further into the Gulf of Mexico and then works its way into the northern portions of the Gulf on Friday. So even though, as I mentioned, there are just a little bit of uncertainty there, again, if you are in any of the areas that are pink or yellow on that map, which, as the governor stated, is pretty much the entire Louisiana coastline, you are at risk. And you do not have to be inside the cone to see those impacts. The possibility of the winds to spread out almost 100 miles from the center. So you could see tropical storm force winds 100 miles or more from the center of this storm. So even if the storm were to make landfall somewhere in the center of our coastline, it is possible that folks both in Lake Charles and New Orleans may see tropical storm force winds. So I want you to understand the breadth of the spread of the winds with this system that is possible as we move from Friday into Saturday. So currently the watches that are out right now, you can see everywhere in the purple is the hurricane watch, which covers most of a little bit of southeastern portions of the state, working its way back across the central coast and even towards the far western portions of the coastline for the state of Louisiana towards the state line with Texas. The southeastern portion of the state is currently in a tropical storm watch. Now, even though that you may feel like you're just over in the area there in the pink, does not mean that you are safe and sound. The possibility still of tropical storm force winds in the range of 50 or 60 miles per hour can take down trees, large limbs, knock out power, and cause all sorts of problems there as well. So again, some of these impacts are going to be seen wide-reaching away from the center of the storm. And so if you are in any of these areas listed there, you should be preparing for significant winds. And then if you're along the coast, you should be preparing for a significant surge. I'll talk a little bit more about the surge here in just a second. The one last thing I want to mention about the winds is when the earliest reasonable time that we could see these winds. Now, if this storm were to speed up just a little bit, it's possible that sometime later tomorrow evening, the first signs of the tropical storm force winds may reach the coast. But the most likely time of such an event is going to be on Friday morning. So, as the governor mentioned, it's probably a good idea to go ahead and have all preparations and plans and be in place as we get to sunset tomorrow evening. And then that way you'll make sure that you have everything done before the onset of any of the tropical storm force winds reaches the area. I mentioned earlier about the storm surge. Those warnings and watches are out right now. Everywhere you see in the blue color right now is in a storm surge watch. In those areas, it's possible that you could see dangerous surge. I'll show a map here in just a second that highlights some of the heights that the water may come in at the surge. And the biggest area right now is basically centered right around maybe Vermilion Bay over towards Port Fourchon, where 7 to 11 feet is possible. Anything over 9 feet is well in the range of life-threatening. You're talking about anything that's a one-story building being completely inundated with water. Understand this also does not take into account any wave action. So if you do have interest on the coast and you have something elevated at 10 or 11 feet, understand that the wave action could be a couple of feet higher above that and still cause even more damage at a level higher. So this is something that may change a little bit depending on the intensity of delta as it comes on shore. It may also change as with respect to how broad that wind field gets that I mentioned earlier. The broader the wind field, the farther reaching impacts of surge will be seen. And you can see there's even surge working its way east of the Mississippi, Lake Borgne, 4 to 6 feet, into the tidal lakes, Lake Pontchartrain, Maurepas, 3 to 5. So there's definitely going to be coastal flooding even well away from the center, which again, I try to highlight the same statement here again. You do not have to be in that cone or along that center line to see significant impacts from Hurricane Delta. The timing of this surge will start coming in tomorrow night with a peak sometime on Friday. And then understand during that time frame, as you get through high tide, it may be just a little bit higher than that with that extra little tidal influence. Rainfall is not the biggest threat with this system because it is moving fairly quickly. When it comes on shore, it may be moving anywhere from 15 or greater miles per hour across the state. With that, rainfall amounts may be a little bit limited, but still we could see on aerial average in the heaviest bands 4 to 6, maybe 6 to 8 inches of rainfall, locally higher amounts. That's more than enough rain if it happens in a very short time to create flash flooding, river flooding, and become a significant issue if anyone would dare try to travel in such conditions, which again, I say this almost every time that we've been doing these over the last few weeks. It's probably one of the most dangerous things you can do if you're getting heavy rain and flooding, if you think that you're going to get out in a vehicle and try to move around, especially at night. You have no idea how deep that water is, how fast that water is moving, and if you're trying to drive over a bridge, a culvert, or anything like that, it's possible that that bridge or culvert that you're looking for may not even be there depending on the force of the water. Everybody needs to make sure that they respect the power of water. And we have a phrase at the Weather Service that I'll use right now, the turn around, don't drown. If you see water ponding from this event, just do not drive into it. Turn around, find a different way. Make sure that you're putting yourself and your family, whoever may be in the vehicle, in the best possible position to get where you want to go and avoid driving through that high water. So some key takeaways as we finish up our discussion here about Hurricane Delta. It's definitely going to bring impacts to the state of Louisiana. I don't believe that there's any uncertainty about that. All the models show it making landfall somewhere along our coastlines. So again, if you are in one of the watch areas right now, understand that you are at risk. You need to make preparations, and your window for that will close sometime during the evening tomorrow so that you can get that all done within a safe time frame. The key things that we'll be watching for when it comes with the actual forecast is two things at this point. Since we feel pretty good about where the track is going to be, which is somewhere along the coastline in Louisiana, we're going to watch two things. One, when is it going to start to make that turn to the north? And how strong is it going to be when it gets to that point? The second thing that we'll watch at that point moving on is when it starts to start north, how soon will it start to drift a little bit to the northeast? So this is why we tell everybody again, like we started off with and what the governor mentioned as well, is don't get completely fixated on the cone. A lot of times these things can move outside the cone. A recent example would have been just a couple weeks ago with Sally. Right now at this time frame, when we were forecasting Sally, there was still lots of impacts to be expected in southeast Louisiana. Within 24 to 36 hours of landfall, that center line had shifted all the way over to Mobile and towards Pensacola. So if you are on the eastern side of this system, and that is usually the way that these things air, you still need to make sure that you're paying attention, staying aware, and have a plan in place to do what you need to do if that track shifts. And so with that, I'll open it up to any questions that anyone may have. Yes.
I just want to make sure I'm clear. You said that usually if they're going to shift outside of the zone, they usually go to the east side.
Yes. Yeah, an eastern shift is the more usual one, especially in this setup, because it's already wanting to start the trend to the northeast as it works its way into and through the state.
Okay, is there a time frame where it's sort of at that point it's usually locked in with the path is, and how many hours in advance do you feel
Well, the unfortunate reality is meteorology is an imperfect science. So I can't tell you exactly when that point is going to be where it's going to make the turn to the northeast. Which is why I say that if you are currently right now on the eastern side of that cone or on the edge of that cone or even just outside of it, you probably should go ahead and still pay very close attention of what's going on here. There is no certainty that it will not do that. And if for anyone who wants to get so locked into what's happening right at the center point of the forecast and not realize that there is the possibility that it could err to the east, you're putting yourself possibly at risk because, again, this is something that we see over and over again with a lot of storms, especially this time of year, that once they start to turn to the northeast, they may drag a little bit more that direction than they normally would.
Wes Muller with the Louisiana Illuminator. Can you tell how long is it expected to linger after first landfall?
So one of the saving graces with Delta is that it's going to be a fast-moving storm. So with its speed right now, as it makes landfall and moves through the state, somewhere maybe even greater than 15 miles per hour, we may only see impacts for a window of about 12 to maybe 15 hours before it works its way through. So if you are in the worst part of this system, understand there's going to be that 6 to 12 hour period where it could be very, very bad. And the actual impacts themselves will last, again, like I mentioned, probably for about 12 to 15, maybe 18-hour period at most before it works its way out of the state and into either Mississippi or towards the Tennessee Valley.
During Laura, even the day ahead, you said there was virtually no, it had no breaks, there was virtually no chance that it would weaken. Is there anything that could dissipate this? I mean, what are the chances that anything could happen to slow this one weaken?
So there is the possibility that as Delta works its way towards the coast, it could be impacted by a little bit of wind shear. That wind shear will probably be the #1 thing that may help weaken it as it approaches the coast. So it's possible that it could end up being a Cat 2 at landfall. But we tell everybody for every single storm, because there is an air of about 10 to 15 miles per hour for every storm, that you need to go ahead and prepare that it's going to be 1 category higher. So even if it were to weaken to that point, the wind damage still would be extensive. The surge would still be at the same levels. The rainfall would be at the same levels. All the threats would still be there. The difference of 5 or 10 miles per hour for any individual safety is not enough to think that this is going to be something that is so noticeable. No one's going to notice the difference really between 100-mile-per-hour winds and 110-mile-per-hour winds. They're going to knock down trees, power lines are coming down, it's going to do significant damage. So just because it's a Category 2 or a Category 3, you're not going to be able to walk outside after this and be able to tell the difference no matter either way. Thank you.
Thank you, Ben. So the bottom line is stay weather aware. Pay attention to the National Weather Service, the Weather Channel, your local news sources. There are several mandatory evacuations outside of levee protection systems, and there are also numerous voluntary evacuations that are in place. And I expect that more may develop over the coming day or so. So please continue to pay attention to the directions given by your local officials. I can tell you that there are those voluntary and mandatory evacuations exist in the following parishes. And by the way, all of these will have office closures for tomorrow as well. Acadia, Assumption, Beauregard, Calcasieu, Lafayette, Lafourche, St. Martin, and St. Mary. And in Jefferson Parish, the town of Grand Isle, Cameron, Iberia, Jeff Davis, and Vermilion parishes. I can tell you that state offices will be closed statewide on Friday. We know that already, and obviously they'll be closed Saturday and Sunday as well. we will reassess on Sunday afternoon about whether there's a need to continue office closures on Monday. The Department of Corrections is assisting and helping to coordinate the evacuation of a number of parish prisons located in coastal Louisiana and had not returned all of the inmates that had been evacuated for Laura. But at the end of the day, there will be several thousand inmates who will be evacuated out of coastal Louisiana and to prisons further to the north. Obviously, storm surge is a very big concern with this storm along most of the coast, as you saw. The CPRA is tracking 689 gates across the coastal zone, and as of this morning, 229 were closed. CPRA has numerous missions currently underway in Jefferson Parish, primarily in the Grand Isle area, but also in St. Mary and Terrebonne parishes. The National Guard has more than 1,300 guardsmen activated in support of emergency operations, and they have pre-positioned 114 high-water vehicles, 56 boats, and 8 aircraft to provide search and rescue support. And they have an additional 16 aircraft on standby. Additionally, the National Guard has already delivered 90 Super Sacs to Grand Isle. I'm sorry, they delivered 90 yesterday to Grand Isle, an additional 260 to be delivered today in order to shore up the Gulf Side levee, the South Side levee of Grand Isle. The incident support team is operational with 28 state members and 35 members from FEMA who will be joining our operations. The State Fire Marshal urban search and rescue equipment is prepared and staged, and this is a multifaceted approach. The primary state assets and personnel come from the Fire Marshal's Office and Wildlife and Fisheries. That includes 193 people in total, but out-of-state requests have been made through the EMAC system, and there are about 165 individuals coming in from South Carolina, Kansas, Tennessee, and Oklahoma to be pre-positioned. And then there are another 140 or so federal personnel for search and rescue that we're working through FEMA. Altogether, more than 560 search and rescue responders with the appropriate equipment who are specialized in search and rescue when you have high water and structural collapse. I can tell you that 7,500 utility crew members will be staged in the state pre-landfall with an additional 8,300 ready to be called in. And just to be clear, and it shouldn't be necessary, there is no COVID regulation or order issued by me or anyone else that would prevent contractors or utility crews or insurance adjusters or anybody else from coming into Louisiana, whether it's to help restore power or to help with any other response effort that we'll be making or recovery effort out there. And obviously that was a false rumor that gained some currency on social media after Laura, and I thought I would just address that in advance. Let us not forget that Southwest Louisiana is still recovering from Hurricane Laura. There are still a lot of structures with significant damage. While power has been restored to just about everybody outside of Cameron Parish, we know that they don't have the redundancy there that they would like to have. We also know that there remains, despite tremendous efforts by locals and by the state, there still remains a lot of debris. And so as strong winds impact that area, that debris can be transformed into missiles, and so we have to be very careful with that. And I'm very concerned that the 5 hardest hit parishes from Laura in southwest Louisiana are in the cone, and with the westward movement of the track. Again, the storm can come in anywhere in the cone. It can come in outside the cone. But obviously we would not want, and of course you don't want the hurricane to hit anywhere, but we know that the area that is least prepared and ready for a storm happens to be southwest Louisiana. So we have to pay very careful attention to that, and everybody needs to pay attention to their local elected officials, but that is especially the case in southwest Louisiana. To date, because of Laura, FEMA has put nearly $157 million in the hands of survivors. Almost $107 million of that is for housing assistance, and $50 million is for other needs assistance. And FEMA has registered more than 180,000 households. Additionally, the Small Business Administration has approved $243 million in low-interest loans to help Louisiana hurricane survivors recover. And you can go to disasterloanassistance.sba.gov, or you can call 800-659-2955 for more information about those Small Business Administration loans. Got an update on assessments from FEMA, damage assessments with respect to homes today. With respect to Laura, that's 58,000 homes with minor damage, about 38,000 with moderate damage, 35,000 with major damage, and over 10,000 completely destroyed. So those are the numbers that we currently have. And so this is the reality that many homeowners are facing as we prepare for Delta. Obviously not a very good situation. We still have many people affected by Hurricane Laura who are sheltering in hotel rooms. As of this morning, 6,038 of them were in Louisiana hotels. About 2,000 or so are in Texas. Because of the hurricane, we've stopped moving people back from home, from the shelter, and we won't commence that again until it is safe to do so, and we are sure that the home that we're going to be sending these people to is suitable for them to return to. And the movement back from the hotel shelters has been discontinued both in Louisiana and in Texas. Anyone needing shelter from Hurricane Delta should follow the guidance of local officials and their local Office of Emergency Preparedness. For shelter information, you can always text LA Shelter to 898-211. LA Shelter to 898-211. The Department of Health continues to monitor healthcare resources across the state. Held a statewide call yesterday with all regions and stakeholders to ensure readiness for storm impacts, with a particular emphasis on hospitals and nursing homes in at-risk areas. For everyone out there, if you believe that you may need to use a generator, and we don't know who you are because we don't know where the power is going to go out, but we can expect power outages, we do want to remind people that a number of deaths after Laura were caused because of unsafe operation of generators. So in advance, please make sure that you position that generator at least 20 feet from your home in a well-ventilated area, not underneath a window or a vent, not in a crawl space or a garage, and certainly not in your home. And when you're going to fill the generator with fuel, please turn it off. Make sure that it cools down for about 20 minutes before you do that. Please have a carbon monoxide detector with fresh batteries as well, because we had at least 9 individuals who died of carbon monoxide poisoning. The Calcasieu Parish Health Unit will be suspending some operations, including COVID testing, tomorrow. And on the topic of COVID, I do want to point out that today's numbers include a fairly large backlog of both cases and tests. I'll get to that. We are reporting 1,052 new cases. 432 of those were backlogged. And we are also reporting 23,032 new tests. 7,838 of those were backlogged. So if you wanted a report today that really looks at what's been happening here very recently, we would have reported 620 cases on 15,644 tests. Sadly, again today, we were reporting new deaths, this time 9 new deaths. Also today, there's a little bit of good news. After 2 days of increasing hospitalizations, we saw a decrease today. So there are 552 statewide COVID-19 hospitalizations that we're reporting, which is down from 567. So that's down 15. Unfortunately, we have 7 additional patients on ventilators today than yesterday. There are 78 on ventilators today in our report, and 71 is what we reported yesterday. Now, I know that what we just went through is a lot of information, and it relates to Delta, it relates to Laura, it relates to COVID, and that's a good segue into the fact that as we continue to prepare for and anticipate responding to Hurricane Delta, we're doing it in a public health emergency. Quite frankly, the fact that we have not seen a surge in Louisiana, when you look at what happened around Labor Day, with the resumption of K through 12 schools, higher education campuses reopening, Labor Day weekend itself, and Hurricane Laura, that only happened, and I should say the surge didn't happen because of the degree to which people are following the mitigation measures and restrictions that are in place. They remain critically important because one thing we know about Hurricane Delta, there's going to be some period of time where we're not going to be testing as robustly as we would want to. And we always hate when that happens because you lose visibility into what the virus is doing for some period of time. And so we are asking everyone to make sure that you wear your mask when you're not with people of the immediate household, physically distance at least 6 feet from those individuals, make sure that you wash your hands frequently, stay home when you're sick, and let's really make sure that we're protecting the vulnerable, those 65 and older or have those pre-existing comorbid health conditions that we've been talking about for so long. I would encourage everyone when they wake up tomorrow to pretty quickly become weather aware, because one of the key things that we have to figure out is what is Hurricane Delta going to do as it enters the Gulf and comes off the land of the Yucatan Peninsula. Does that wind field get larger? How quickly does it strengthen? What adjustments do they make to the track? And so all of those things will be figured out by the National Weather Service and Hurricane Center tonight. Much of that information should be available to us early tomorrow, but all day tomorrow we have to continue to track the storm. And so I'll let people decide whether tomorrow morning they say a prayer before they check the weather or they check the weather before they say the prayer, but we all need to do both of those. So as we continue to prepare for the worst and pray for the best. With that, I'm going to take your questions for just a moment. Greg, how did I know you would be first?
Governor, was a Category 3 forecast, that doesn't trigger any mandatory evacuation?
No. Where we have evacuations like that, it's typically in southeast Louisiana in the New Orleans metro area. So we don't have any state-imposed.
And thanks for joining us as we just got out of the governor's press conference. Here's the very latest information. Obviously, we got preparations currently underway, but here's what we got and what we know so far. The latest advisory just came out at 4 o'clock this afternoon. The system has weakened a little bit. Delta now a Category 1 storm with winds sustained at 85 miles per hour. But don't let that fool you, because we are expecting this system to re-strengthen as it moves into the warm waters of the Gulf of Mexico. There isn't a lot of shear until it gets to the northern edge. So again, just be very mindful of that. You see right now it's moving northwest at 17 miles per hour. That is a pretty steady pace. Now it is expected to slow down a little bit, some of that forward speed, as it starts to build a little bit and gains some size and intensity as it makes its way into the central Gulf of Mexico. And again, it's now finally starting to lift its way away from the Yucatan Peninsula. And again, the reason it kind of cooled or kind of weakened a little bit was because of those cooler waters. Notice almost over the same spot that Gamma sat just a few days ago. So a little bit of upwelling, some cooler waters out there, weakening temporarily, because as you see here again, the warm waters obviously following this current path still expected to reach major hurricane strength, which is a Category 3 or above. Now again, they're not excluding out the possibility of a Category 4 quite yet, but it should kind of be towards the lower end of the scale. You can see the winds at 115 miles per hour, still Category 3 as we get into Friday. And just to give you an idea, we're talking sometime early afternoon. It looks like we're going to see landfall now. And again, that's the latest advisory. If it walks a little bit further east, well then landfall is going to be slightly later. If it walks a little bit further west, well then again it should be a little bit earlier, maybe around lunchtime or just around late morning. But you see here it's a Category 2. And again, that's kind of weakening because it's running into some wind shear, obviously. But if this is a large system, kind of ignore that because, again, the impacts, as they mentioned in the press conference, they're going to be far-reaching. Again, we could see hurricane force winds possibly up to about 40, 50 miles from the center. Tropical storm force winds maybe up to about 120 miles from the center. So that obviously puts us right in the middle of that path. And as you see here, there still is a little bit of wiggle room, potential for a little bit of jog east or west. Doesn't matter at this point. By the time we get to, say, the northern half of the state, kind of weakening to about a tropical storm just around I-20 and then moving off towards the northeast. Luckily, the system is expected to move along. It's not going to stall, so we don't have to worry about crazy rain totals, but still the potential for some flash flooding out there. You can see a lot of agreement, obviously, until you get to about the central Gulf of Mexico. Then it starts to widen a little bit, but not by much. Again, we could talk about 20, 30 miles east, 20, 30 miles west, obviously, as the system moves closer and closer. And again, that potential that it could step a little bit further outside of that cone is still possible because the system still sits in the southern Gulf. So I do want to point out, because of the closeness, well, you see here, we now sit underneath a hurricane watch, mainly for areas on the west side of the Mississippi River. So again, we are talking about Iberville and Point Coupee Parish. That goes all the way down to Assumption, St. Mary Parish, Terrebonne Parish. All of it underneath that hurricane watch means hurricane conditions are possible within 48 hours. By later on tonight, early tomorrow, well, we're going to probably be underneath a warning. All areas shaded in yellow, that is a tropical storm watch. So West Baton Rouge, East Baton Rouge, Livingston, Ascension, and down towards St. James and the Felicianas and southern Mississippi currently underneath that watch. So again, those winds up to about 40. But here's the deal, kind of give you an idea. We got the chance for some outlying storms, some of those outer bands to move in late Thursday going into early Friday. I think the main wave should arrive probably around lunchtime and then drive through. Some of these outer bands, that's going to be the concerning part. In this type of environment, late in the season, a lot of wind shear out there, chance for tornadic storms. And again, we could see some outliers, obviously, with some of these feeder bands that could rapid fire, tornado warning after tornado warning. Now, again, this model indicates, you can see kind of right here on the border of Cameron and Vermilion Parish, just a hair east of, again, this is our in-house model, just a hair west of Vermilion Bay, but obviously storm surge moving right into Vermilion Bay. And as we move that system out, I do want to show you here. Again, this is one model. However, the European has moved back. It was going further west, now trending back towards the east. Just kind of keep an eye on that. Then it quickly races out of here. Conditions quiet down late on Saturday. And just to show you one more model out there, you can see this one pretty much in agreement with ours, kind of putting it right just south of Lafayette, right around the Abbeville area, just a hair west of Vermilion Bay, and then driving through the area. But obviously, we sit on the eastern side of the storm. That northeastern quadrant is always the worst, the strongest winds, the heaviest rainfall, and obviously the largest storm surge, which is going to get pushed right into Vermilion Bay. So here's the outlook. Right now, again, tropical storm force winds, pretty likely that we will see that at some point as the system moves closer. Chance for hurricane force winds, well, I still think it's out there. As the system moves closer, moves a couple miles possibly to the east, well then our overall probability, well, that's going to continue to climb. And just take a look at this. I'm going to show you as the system arrives. Again, this is just one. Hurricane force winds are possible. You saw it highlighted in the purple, but I'll show you one more model out there and watch this one. As it moves inland, this is our in-house. You can see the system, even by the time we get to Friday morning, winds over 40 miles per hour. And then notice this. This is hurricane force winds by the time we get to, as you see here, that's very late, after 8 o'clock on Friday, as the system drives a little bit further inland. So again, we do have the chance for some very strong winds with this that could lead to widespread power outages as we continue to move forward. I do also want to point out, as the system lifts out here, the concern for rain. They put us underneath a flash flood watch starting out Thursday evening and lasting through about midday on Saturday. Chance for anywhere from 4 to 6 inches of rain. Locally, we could see some higher amounts, and obviously here 4 to 6, 2 to 4, and 6 to 10, a little bit near there, or a little bit higher near the coast, obviously. So again, that water could pond at times. I also want to point out that they do have some storm surge warnings, or watches, excuse me, watches along the coastline, because anywhere from, again, you're talking watches from High Island extending all the way to Grand Isle at this point. Some areas up to 7 to 11 feet is possible. We're going to show you more of that, obviously, coming up tonight at 5. So make sure you tune in to our evening newscast. Again, we're talking at 5 o'clock on NBC, 5:30 on Fox 44, and we'll be back at 6 o'clock on your NBC station. And continue to follow us on Be Our Proud for the very latest. Otherwise, thanks for joining us, and stay safe.